Oh, we're live. Look at that. I got it to work. Okie doke. So what should my course of action be? Assuming that this is going to make that work. Assuming that's working and not the webcam mic. All right, we're going to share this out to Twitter. Anyone watching already in the post show, I'm going to be doing a review of my first part one of my conversation with Xoaquin Flores, because it's a pretty beefy conversation, very meaty, a lot of stuff. I want to get granular, consolidate it, and just hit the key points, because he kind of went on tangents and it's kind of all over the place. And there's a lot of really important just things I understand about it. So sorry, I'm trying to talk multitask. So bear with me. Anyone that gives a hoot to watch this madness. And you know how Twitter is, they won't show a screen, a preview when you share YouTube links. Oh, that's a beautiful screenshot. That's hilarious. Definitely going to use that. Not. I look extra white boy than I am. Wait, I'm not white. I'm Italian. I'm a minoritois. Faux show. Oh, look at that. We got one viewer. Is that including me? Okay. So I had to take a picture. And I had to. This is going to be my thumbnail on Twitter, because Twitter does not use actual thumbnails, because it's yeah. If you want to live stream, you're going to see everything cool on our Periscope platform. Do they even have Periscope? I don't know. Oh, that's beautiful. We're going to go with it. Oh, this is magnificent. Okay, hold on. Bear with me, folks. Also, I think there's two of you here already. Thanks for being here. Hey, I'm live on the boob tube talking part one of my Xoaquin. I always forget how to spell his name. Xoaquin Flores interview. Dude, my computer is going to die. All right, beautiful. There we go. Oh, show 69 tweets. It's a good day. It's a good day for a Monday. Okay, let's stop bullshitting around and talk brass tacks, right? Oh, one more place I can shill it. I am going to shill this in the Tom Luongo Patreon. Because why not? And if Tom gets mad at me, then, he's got it right. He's got it right. Dude, my computer's going to die. The fan is just spazzing out right now. What channel do I put this in is a question. Money, geopolitics, probably geopolitics, or in podcast. Podcast. Let's do podcast. Yo. I know, this is good TV, one person watching. I do it for you. Yo, I'm live. There we go. Shilling is fun. Copy link. Paste link. Wait a minute. I don't think this is the actual link. I think I fucked up majorly. Whatever. If people see it on Twitter and well, that means they actually pay attention to whatever the hell I have to say, right? And oh, this is gonna be creepy. I'm gonna hear myself. Oh, but I got the link before. Okay. Ah, I'm regarded. I am regarded as a regard. All right, let's do this. Let's talk before my fucking computer catches on fire. Jesus Christ. All right, we still got viewer number 1. All right, man, this one's for you. And let me start the recording in GarageBand, and we're going. So, salutations, Sat-Stackers and Kin. You are listening to A Boy Named Pseu. That's Mr. Pseu to you, aka Phil Gibson. And this is actually the first live stream on YouTube and probably Odyssey elsewhere that I'm doing. And I wanted to do this because it's going to be a review of the interview that I did with Xoaquin Flores. It's the 5-parter, full 5-hour interview or so is on YouTube if you would like to check that out. And if you just have like a high time preference, like if people are being honest, that's the majority of people. But yeah, that's out there if you want to do that. But the purpose of this is that Xoaquin just covers so many crucial issues from his life experience. And let's just like jump into it. So Xoaquin, not to speak for him, but he is a professional revolutionary. He I mean that's pretty much like what he is. And he learned by experience, like anyone else does in whatever they do, but he learned by experience from being astroturfed himself. So let's just kind of walk in his shoes and just kind of do a quick recap of his upbringing. So Xoaquin was born in LA, I think in the late 70s. So he kind of grew up around that era, that kind of like um I guess kind of like post-punk, like hardcore. I and he identifies as like a communist youth when he was a youth. And so he kind of had that natural revolutionary rebellion kind of thing going on, which is badass. Like I never really identified as on the left until I came across Rothbard myself personally. And even I'm like flip-flopping on that because like he kind of drifted more towards like Bat Buchanan, and there's that whole like post-libertarian argument that Mencius Bullbug uses, that the right is actually order and the left is chaos. And then I'm kind of in between, like, well, you kind of needed this yin yang, like chaos and order kind of thing, but I'm still kind of unsure about that. Regardless, though, so Xoaquin grew up as a communist youth on the left. He is a left radicalist, fighting for human rights. He was involved in like the punk movement and like the anti-war movement and the anti-nuclear movement. And all these, as a communist youth, you had to know your shit, like just flat out. And so studying Marxism and Leninism and just actually understanding that. And this is a funny thing because people think that like people on the left think, oh, daddy government. Yes, that's not really the case because Marx believed that the state was an issue. I mean, you gather up you start a revolution and you overthrow the coercive state. But ironically, communism is enforced through coercion because it's kind of like, own nothing to be happy. Not own nothing, but everyone has to be equal. You don't actually achieve that whole everybody's going to be equal without force and violence. But anyway, it was all about, using Marxism, understanding capitalism and the bourgeoisie and just taking advantage of labor and workers and really understanding, like, yeah, we're fighting for human rights and we want a fair share or whatever it might be, better working conditions. And so Marx knew that you had to astroturf the working class or the labor, whatever, the common man, to get them into action and to fight for their rights. So somebody, some revolutionary had to come around and mobilize those people. And that's exactly what you tried to see. I feel like this light is like way too bright and I'm just more neon than usual. One sec. One sec. Okay. On a scale of 1 to shit, is that better? I think. I don't know. Let's go with it. So, as I was saying, these are all the principles that Joaquin learned. Like, do you know the material? Are you a leader? Do you know how to like go out and talk to people and associate? So he kind of learned this like purist, like radical leftism, revolutionary and anarchist kind of stuff as a communist youth. And so that's what he wanted to fight for, like the rights of individual sovereignty. So this is when he starts to get astroturfed because he becomes a master user of astroturfing strategies, but only by being astroturfed himself, like I said. So let's start with him being a communist youth. He's doing whatever, and all of a sudden, these commies out of New York, like I like to think of them as like corporate commies, they basically come in and astroturf his little grassroots organic thing he's got going on in his like communist party, if you want to call it that. I don't know if it was like registered or whatever, but card carrying, I don't know. That's a question for Joaquin, not me. But you basically have these corporatized, quote unquote, like communists that are funded by the deep state to just subvert, overthrow this grassroots purist organization that these other communists were putting on. And instead, it wasn't about the whole intellectual honesty and the work that you put into knowing what Marx was talking about. And I'm not like pro Marx. I'm just, going with what Joaquin was learning, what his inspirations were. And so none of the hard work was really of any importance of these new communist corporate people from New York. What they did instead is that they astroturfed by rallying up people by their emotions, but in a twisted manner where they just focused on pandering to just a targeted group. As I said in the interview, I believe they just focused on some disenfranchised group and with this arbitrary outside corporatized power, and focused more on pandering to just their identity politics, race, sex, basically the same shit that you see nowadays, and how crazy left the whole progressive socialist thing's gotten. And so that's kind of like the first when Joaquin, I think, had the scales fall from his eyes. Like, oh, this is bullshit. I put in all this work and I understand these issues and I can go out and talk to these communities and rally people up. And this is just trivial. It's not even considered. Because it's just like, oh, I'm a crybaby in the corner and this deep state money's backing me so I can just, get out the vote for whatever issue. And that's a nice transition into the next part, is when first let's cover this. So part 1, scales fall from his eyes when he was astroturfed as a communist youth. Later, when he went to university, his geopolitics professor, who I believe, if I got the continuity and order of things that he was explaining correctly. So his professor was an African American, and I think like post-Marxist revolutionary, because I think his professor himself was astroturfed. And he kind of fell into like debauchery. I don't know if he got jaded, but whatever revolutionary thing he was into, I think that got basically taken over. Taken or taken? Taken. Let's go with taken. Learned to grammar. That got taken over, and he kind of like sold out, and he got into debauchery at like with having sex with hookers and stuff when you would go to these AstroTurf revolutionary conferences in countries and whatever. But I really hope this is his professor. If I'm not, then whatever. Go at me and tell me I'm a dumbass when you re-listen to it. But this character is important because it just shows how like a revolutionary spirit can maybe be twisted and corrupted by an outside actor, like someone from the deep state. And so basically Xoaquin was getting pressured from his professor, or not pressured, but his geopolitics professor was encouraging him to join an alphabet soup agency, whether it's the CIA or whatever, just in like intelligence, because Xoaquin was trained in rallying up people and revolution and astroturfing essentially, and he basically had the scales fall from his eyes again because he knew that wasn't for him, and especially when it came to the first color revolution in '99 in Yugoslavia, then he saw that basically what he saw as like an organic uprising of people in Yugoslavia, he thought that it was just the media running with the narrative and using that narrative for their own political expedience. But that although that may have been the case, it was basically the organic movement being astroturf before by the deep state, whether it was Soros or whoever. I'm pretty sure it was Soros funding this. Basically, there was a true organic uprising that came from a sincere place from the individuals. However, the revolutionary that wanted to mobilize them was astroturfed himself by the deep state, because they basically got in before these actual people that were fighting for individual rights. The deep state got in before they could really do anything effective, as I understand it. And that's that's when Xoaquin was starting to realize that, oh, it's not just the media kind of running with the looking at these organic uprisings and twisting the narrative for their own political expedience. That narrative was already very well tainted before anything could be achieved from the revolutionaries. And so he basically said inksnay on joining CIA or whatever intelligence agency. He basically said inksnay on that shit, and from there he went to go work with the SEIU. So representing a very influential labor movement. I think his unit was about 35,000 people that he was representing. And this is when he was working to basically for the Obama campaign, if I understood correctly, for the get out the vote for Obama. And I've got notes here. Very unprofessional. Should have been more prepared, but suck it. This shit's for free. So let's see. Where can I pick this up? Where can I pick this up? So basically, as we know, Xoaquin was anti-establishment. He hated Democrats and Republicans. But what he saw through Obama, and this is going to be important in part 2 of the interview. What he saw in Obama was that he was basically a creation of the deep state and was being sold off to the public as this oligarch. And Xoaquin at the time was also red-pilled on how the dollar worked and fiat currency and how this shit's gonna collapse. Because as we have seen in the past couple weeks, that Saudis are basically going to the petrodollar and going their own way and siding with Russia. And basically this whole dollar hegemony was going to implode on itself. And for some reason, Xoaquin thought that he, in supporting the Obama campaign and the get out the vote, he thought that Obama was actually going to hold true to the economic nationalist platforms that many presidential campaigns are based on, which of course it was a complete fucking lie. But he thought that Obama, it was like this time would be different, and he would use the system against itself. So when every other country hyperinflates into oblivion, that he would just focus more attention on economic growth domestically. Of course, that didn't pan out because, as Joaquin had said, and as I'm sure you can find, that people, the middle class, took a huge hit. Like it was the greatest economic hit since the Great Depression, and people lost everything and they couldn't get that back. And it was just another transfer of wealth from the bottom up to the golden billion, or in the elite feudal lords elitist case, the golden 1 million. And I think this is when he starts to learn that there is that different agenda of things, of this cabal, this group of people, whether you call it the deep state or the Atlanticist, as Joaquin also calls it, or the cabal, or Davos, as I am very much taken a liking to. Shout out Tom Luongo. And this is basically their ultimate game plan: is AstroTurf the common man. And this becomes very much so information warfare. It's a battle of whose propaganda is better. The revolutionaries, that is just using word of mouth and it's coming from a organic, sincere place, and they're able to mobilize the people to actually achieve that self-realization and self-sovereignty? Or does the deep state get there first with their unlimited funding, which is just paper that the world has to be down with because, I mean, it's the state. It is the monopoly on violence. And so he started to see that it was a war. It was a domestic war, but the domestic war was funded from the war abroad. As he said, that all these oligarchs were basically just profiting off of astroturfing in all these other countries, or whether it be the military industrial complex. The bottom line I'm trying to make here is that the war abroad is funding the war at home to inflict the same damage and pain and chaos amongst the people in order for this cabal of the golden 1 million to reign its dominance. And so that's kind of where we are. It's kind of where we're at. And it's a tough cookie to crack, to be honest. Is that even an expression? If it's not, it is now. Crumble, whatever. But really, the only solution, there's a few solutions, but if we're going to be, I guess, realistic, it's an information warfare, and the tactics Joaquin uses, and he has consulted with other governments to fight against astroturfing, counter-revolution, against, the coup revolutions backed by Soros or whatever think tanks. The way that you fight against that is having self-sovereign media platforms. So whether it be something like this, that probably gets, and having to resort to places like Odyssey or whatever it might be. But, how effective can you send that signal out and change people's perspective? But me as a Bitcoiner, this is also kind of where you have a decentralized monetary network parallel to the tainted, corrupted fiat system. And we're seeing that divide happen in real time. The more I and anyone listens to what Long goes on top of, it's insane. And things might not actually become as poo-poo as we suspect, whether we hear it from the WEF or whoever else. But Bitcoin's a huge player here because they hate Bitcoin. They being Davos, the cabal, the golden 1 million. And I'll get to the golden 1 million. I feel like I mentioned that a lot and I just kind of like grazed over it. They hate Bitcoin because they can't control it. That's why they want to co-opt Ethereum. And Tom's been saying this. I've been saying this and I've known this forever, and I'm sure he has too. But that is kind of where we're at. And it's funny, and I think part 5, Joaquin and I discuss what if the internet's down? And I guess that's where gold comes in. And this kind of goes into astroturfing the people. It's like not only you're going to astroturf them into revolutionizing and just political social movements, but you also want to astroturf them on ideas, mobilize them on becoming self-sufficient and learning how to acquire and use weapons for self-defense, so you don't get rubber hose attacked and someone tries to steal your Bitcoin or your gold. And that's where, man, I'm really jumping the gun in the chronology and continuity of the series here, but that is where 3D printing comes in. So let me just kind of back up a little bit. And the golden million is basically the feudal lords reigning over the golden billion, because it's all about depopulation, essentially. It's all about that, and the million of the feudal lords are reigning over the other, I guess, 999 million. It's too late. I've had a long day at work. But, I mean, essentially just putting out the best signal possible is how you fight against this. And there are a few things here that I want to cover. I believe, indubitably. Let me see here. Oh, yeah. So let's see here. I kind of grazed over the 2004 Orange Revolution. And I mean, we'll talk more about that in section 2, no doubt. But we have established that there's a greater astroturfing game. Yes, it happens in pockets towards certain movements here and there, domestically, internationally. But there's a global astroturfing strategy. And I believe that is what international law was. And so, actually, no. Rules-based order. The rules-based order is the globalist astroturfing tactic against international law. So after World War II and the formation of the UN, all countries agreed into international law, which just covers, what nations can and can't do to each other, like steal their shit and have coups and everything. In the West, the Golden West, the Golden West is what comprises of the Golden Billion. The Golden Billion is all basically Western countries. And if I just do the math here in real time, it's essentially the agenda of the cabal to get rid of everyone except the West, and just use imperialism and extraction of resources everywhere else. That's not the Golden West. But basically, the Golden West started to work against international law and not follow those rules, and that's why we've seen the coups and the confessions of an economic hitman play out. And if you have not read that book, which if you're tuning into this live stream and this podcast, A Boy Named Pseu, by the way, again, self-shill. If you're just tuning in, like, you've heard me mention it many times, and so you're probably very well familiar with Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins. That's the new Confessions of Economic Hitman, I might add, which I highly recommend. If you are going to read the book, read the updated one from 2014, I believe. And it talks a lot more about the war abroad funding the war at home. But basically, the Golden West, the Golden Billion, and the Western nation states, I guess G7 or G20, but they have been going against international law. And it's everyone else, whether it be the global South, Asia, Russia, Middle East, kind of take a stand, especially Russia, where they say, rules-based what? When you would have people like Obama or even presidents before him, and I guess anyone with a political platform. I'm sure Trudeau has said this himself, but we're they have a goal of like a rules-based order, and you have the global South speaking up against that and saying fuck this. Like, they're either rules or not. Like, what kind of playbook are you playing by? And this is like an information warfare mind game, like gaslighting the entire global population on what was actually going to be like the law, the rules to follow. It was international law. And I think this was most demonstrated, or, going against international law was most demonstrated in the fall of the Soviet Union and the whole end of the Cold War. Because as Joaquin was saying, basically you got the West saying, yeah, the Soviet Union has fallen, and so now we're going to bring back this rules-based order, and Russia is basically like, okay, we fell, but you didn't win a fucking war. Like, we had our own politicians come in, and yeah, they were corrupt, but we kind of fixed things ourselves in the way and manner of international law. And we don't know what the hell you're talking about with these new rules. So we fixed all this ourselves. If you want to come help, that's great. But as we learn, you had the Harvard boys and these, I guess, like Devosian or Western sleeper cells that pose as Russian oligarchs. And they basically went in, and just like any shitcoiner does, they come in and they basically scoop up all the capital for cheap in Russia. Again, because Soviet Union fell, their economy's dirt, plain dirt. And they basically did the whole private equity thing, and like, nothing against private equity. Like, whenever I say that, I think of what Mitt Romney was into. But basically, they go in and they just scoop up all the assets and resources, and they basically pump it up, and it's just like a pump and dump. And they tried to dish out shares of those companies, but everybody pretty much ended up getting screwed through inflation. I mean, it's just like what you see in shitcoins. The creator goes out and just God, why can't, I guess, helicopter drop? The term is escaping me, but man, I'm gonna think of what the fuck that term is later and go, oh my god, you dumbass Phil. Man, this is really gonna bother me. But basically, airdrop. There we go. Yes. Basically, these shitcoin creators just airdrop a bunch of coins to their friends and some people that are lucky to get it in soon enough, and then they just pump and dump. Goes up, and then they just sell and walk away with cash, or Ethereum in this case, or whatever, probably Bitcoin, because all of the Ethereum founders shit is in Bitcoin essentially. And yeah, that's what happened to the Russian economy when you had these basically corporate American thugs come in and use that economic shock therapy, which left these people devastated. And it wasn't until you actually had a hermetically sealed KGB deep state come in and basically undo all that. So there was like a moment of self-correction, I guess. Or Russia kind of had a plan for the worst possible thing that could happen, because it had like a cohesive unit within its deep state, the KGB. And I mean, that's just kind of like a microcosm example of a sovereign nation fighting against being globally astroturfed. And that's exactly what this whole rhetoric, this whole narrative of what this rules-based order thing is, going against international law. And I mean, that was like the biggest takeaway. The war at home funds the war abroad, and we're all being gaslit by this NWO, like New World Order. We're gonna go with this rules-based order thing. It's going to be hunky-dory. It's going to be great. Don't need to worry about it. This nation's bad, and don't think for yourself. And the wars that they enact and the coups, the profits there, like we see profits taken in Ukraine and elsewhere, go back to funding the corruption at home. I think I've said that like 4 times now. So if it didn't get across your head, I hope it did this time. And I mean, just thinking, because in what I do, I kind of try to relate things back to Bitcoin. And I was talking about this when I was on PBS Live, pleb broadcasting services, with Cara Gonzalez and Kyle Murphy and Logan down at Pleb Lab. We do that podcast in the live stream, and I was talking about this very thing. And Cara's like, well, I was thinking, like, what kind of movements are we into? Like, we're Bitcoiners. Is Bitcoin being astroturfed? And Cara just goes to me and is like, isn't that what the fork wars were? And I'm like, oh shit, you're absolutely right. Because what you had in Bitcoin was you had these competing narratives. Like, you had the Bitcoin core maxis who were like, no, fuck you. Like, we're not going to raise the block size, no matter whatever your corporate backers say, whether it's Coinbase or whatever other big, corporation that was trying to like buy off these miners and support forking into Bcash. It was basically saying like, fuck you, we're not going to upgrade our nodes here. And yeah, saya the fucking aura, man. Saya the fucking aura. And so, I mean, it's just great that within Bitcoin we have an example of, I was paying attention, but I'm sure that there were kind of multiple revolutionaries that had to come in to like the Reddit forums and actually be loud and actually tell people what was going on. And don't go with Roger Ver, even though he's like a great libertarian on the surface. He's trying to scam you. He's playing his own con. Either he believes this or he likes the smell of his own farts and is just buying into his own bullshit. And yeah, I mean, you had people like Coinbase and others try to astroturf Bitcoin, and they failed. I mean, it was a good cash grab, and shitcoin derivatives of Bitcoin are merely just that. And if you know what you're doing in trading, which I sure as hell don't, but if you know what you're doing in those cases, you can just use the shitcoins against themselves and flip it into Bitcoin again. But like, regardless, yeah, that is what happened. Like, someone tried to astroturf Bitcoin, and that's not going to be the last time we see that either. Whether it's on actual like the core development level, or if it's something as stupid and politically motivated as changing it from blacklist to block list, or whatever the fuck it was. I don't really pay that much attention to like tech stuff that goes on, because snore. But yeah, it's little things like that. Like, what do we need to be conscious of? What do we need to be aware of? I'm not saying be paranoid, but just be aware that these things do happen. And, it's up to whoever. I mean, fuck it. It's up to all of us to be loud and speak truth, but just be resourceful about where we get our information and resources, and just make sure that we're delivering the sharpest, most powerful signal of what's going on without getting banned anywhere. Which, if I make it through this video on YouTube without being banned, that will be an accomplishment. First live stream, smooth sailing. So I think I've covered everything, but it won't surprise me if I look back at my phone and my notes and I'm like, oh, fuck. Yeah. So, let's see here. Oh, da 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 da. Da 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 da. I just came up with that melody. I kind of dig it. Good thing this is recording, because I will probably go back and listen to that shit. Yeah, man. Yeah. So I hope this was a nice broken down version of part 1 with Joaquin Flores. Tomorrow I'm gonna drop episode 2, where we talk more about all this jazz, all this stuff. And yeah, it's been great. I hope you liked this video. I do plan on doing more live streams and putting stuff up on YouTube and over to Odyssey and whatnot. Feel free to peruse the YouTube channel, subscribe. That always helps. If you think what I'm doing is informative and fun and whatever adds value or not value, value subjective, as we all know. If you think it's decent, you dig it, subscribe, share it, smash that like button. Sorry, I had to. It's my YouTube stream. I couldn't help being a cringy douchebag. But regardless, yeah, my nose is stuffy. That's what I gotta say. Fuck allergies. But yeah, peruse the YouTube channel. I was actually very pleased with the reception I got from the Tom Luongo interview. That man is a machine, and I'm not the same cat I was like in October or whenever the hell it was I found him. I think it was the end of September. Like, nuance is just so critical. Like, not enough people understand how critical nuance is with all this. It's not just end the Fed, which is blasphemous on my own part because I wrote a fucking song called End the Fed. With due time, we will end the Fed, or it will end itself. But as Tom says, we have to go in the order of operations here. Okay? Step 1, get rid of the ECB. Or really, step 1, increase rates on reverse repo and interest on excess reserve. And then raise Fed funds rate. Which, listening back to his episode he did with Alex, fuck, I'm going to forget. But the Feds raised reverse repo by actually no, Fed funds rate by 40 fucking basis points, dude. I mean, did anybody expect that to happen a year ago? No. No. So yeah, that's step 1. Powell and the Fed using monetary tools that they have. Step 2, separating from LIBOR, because LIBOR is the rate not judged and based on American domestic markets. Again, this goes back into like that's the real cabal, all the central banks, the global cartel of central banks controlling America until SOFR, which has been like I think fully installed, or at least started to get rolled out in 2019. But for sure, that's like what America's basing their mortgage rates and other shit on these days. Yeah. So those are like the first few steps, and then eventually it's basically the ECB, the EU getting margin called and that collapsing, and capital flight from there into America, and from there we might actually see some prosperity, and also maybe pay attention to Turkey, and not just that, but like any other country that went through like a currency collapse or crisis. Because if that's already happened, then maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to stick around and see what's going on in those countries as they prosper. But again, everywhere is going to implode on itself before the U.S. crumbles. But hopefully that doesn't happen. It's interesting to think, is Powell close to putting Bitcoin on the nation's balance sheet? That's kind of pie in the sky sounding and feeling and hypothesizing right now. But hey, it's a thought. It's not impossible, especially if the U.S. corporate globalists want to maintain what power and control they have. They're not going to go out without a fight, and that's exactly what we are seeing before our eyes. We are seeing this fight. We are seeing the union of the central banks breaking up. I mean, it's just crazy. And it really is like this time is different. And it's really hard for people to wrap their head around that because they're so tuned in to how they think, Austrian economics should work and how Keynesian economics should work. But again, this all comes back to nuance and paying attention to what these characters do, not what they say, and understand where they're coming from and why they're doing it. It all is back to incentive. So I think incentive is drawing the line in the sand when it comes to EU Davos versus Wall Street, Fed, Paulians, whatever you want to call them. I'm a Luwangan. And I'm Phil. And this has been A Boy Named Pseu. That's Mr. Pseu to you, aka Phil Gibson. I'm going to wrap it up here. Nice little short stream. I'm going to be on a Spaces today. So catch that at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7 Texas time. If you're new to my show and I refer to timing increments, they're going to be in blocks or they're going to be in Texas time because those are the only times that matter. Take notes, learn, kids. Anyway, so the show is A Boy Named Pseu, PSEU. And if you like the video and the podcast, subscribe, share it. It's going to help me out. I'm just trying to send good signal and have fun with it and learn in real time. If you don't like what I'm doing, let me know. Send me feedback. Let's get some dialogue and not be fucking little bitchy ass children and bitching because it makes us feel good and we're bored. Because that's not productive. And that's not what I'm for. And I think that's about it. I'll be in Miami for the Bitcoin conference. Please don't try to rubber hose attack me. And what else is going on? I don't know. That's it. It's the end of the day. I'm a little loosey-goosey, but hope you enjoyed this. Follow me at Mr. Pseu on the Twitter. And yeah, until then, I'm going to sign off. But as always, own your failure because God knows our so-called leaders do not. So peace out, sayonara, adios. Adios? Adios. I need a speech therapist. Or just need to clear my sinuses. Anyway, this has been A Boy Named Pseu. Peace. And bye. And I'm going to stall until I figure out how to turn this shit off. End stream. Later.